And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Art Fromm is a sales transformation consultant with a wealth of consultative sales training and development expertise based on 20 plus years of experience as a customer and in pre-sales, sales, and sales management roles. Art began in engineering and quickly moved into the software space, running internal software applications at Fortune 500 companies. This led to sales engineering, account management, and sales management positions with leading enterprise software companies where he routinely surpassed revenue and performance targets. Art moved into an internal sales enablement role in 2000 and drove US business for a global learning provider, and eventually founded his own company in 2009, Team Sales Development, which is focused on helping sales engineers and account managers improve results, seamless sales. And Art, with that, I will stop my share and I will turn the time over to you for the remainder of the session.
Thank you, Garrett, and welcome everybody. And thank you so much to Consensus for putting this session on. It's just amazing to have this amount of resources. And believe me, as soon as my session's done, I'm going to be tuned in for the rest of today, tomorrow, and Thursday to see all the rest of the sessions. For those of you that are watching live, thank you for being here. Please go ahead and put your job function and location into the chat so we know where you're calling from and roughly speaking who's here. I see already a variety of different locations across the world, which is very exciting, and then a whole bunch of different job titles, which is important. This session will be, well, by the way, and everybody that's listening to the recording, thank you for joining as well, which is the way I'm going to watch a lot of my sessions because there's so many good sessions. This session is for pre-sales and sales, and it's for sales enablement and sales management. So whoever you are, whatever role you are, there should be something for you to take away from this. And this is all in the theme of working together seamlessly. Now, generally speaking, throughout the presentation, you will hear me refer to pre-sales mostly as a SE. And I know there's a lot of different job functions. You will see as we move through this that SE is going to have another term, which I actually put into Susan's session in the chat. She did such a great job of setting this session up for me, is in terms of solution enablement, because really we're all involved with solution enablement, and the SE type role has a very specific portion of that. And then for the sales role, generally speaking, I'm going to refer to it as account manager, even though I know that there's a lot of different sales roles. So obviously at the very beginning, we've got SDRs and BDRs. Many of you are in an AE type role when you first get involved, and then there are account managers, but I know many of my clients call the role overall AM. So I'm going to use AM, and also that will point to something you'll see where it's another umbrella idea of account management as an overarching function where all of us are engaged throughout. And in Susan's session, you might have noticed that there was a lot of chat about, well, what about the handoff and things like that. So this is to help remind us that we all have that umbrella function. So let's go ahead and get started into this. And I'm going to have you participating in the chat. Thank you. I still see a lot of people putting in your job title and your location. That's awesome. Really glad to have all of you here. I'd like to shift gears here and let's get started with talking a little bit about, let me share my screen here. Let's start with a little bit of a discussion about the evolution of sales and pre-sales in terms of what is going on here, and in particular, what's going on with the buyer's process. So let me share my screen here. All right, there we go. I'm used to Zoom, as probably most of you are. I'm just firing up. There it comes. Okay. So what I'd like you to do in the chat real quick is, I'm going to put in here, I'd like to know from you, what are you seeing in terms of for yourself? What has the evolution looked like for you or for the role that you're in over the last 7 to 10 years? I know that's going back a ways, but specifically, I want to transition from the days of selling a product or solution that was handed off to a customer or client, and then they just used it, versus what's going on these days in terms of the buyer. So what's happening with the environment? Go ahead and put that in the chat, what your ideas are. What's different that you've been experiencing, if been around for a while, that's different from a buyer from 7 to 10 years ago as they are now? And by the way, when I say buyer, it's the broadest sense of it. It's the client, it's any or all stakeholders that are involved in the buying process. So all of your clients, what's different? So we've got more C-level groups, much larger decision groups. Absolutely. We've got, depending on the vertical, there's a variety of different things. Look at these answers coming in. Please check these out. Buyers are smarter. They ask for more trials. Our engagement is shorter. And by the way, I'm just looking a little bit off camera here to the chat. More complex and competitive environment, more due diligence, more POCs, a lot of expectations, more training. All right, so keep the ideas coming. And here's a few, which some of you have already started to zero in on, that are very important and affect the need for us to evolve. So first of all is the fact that SaaS has changed a lot. So with the advent of cloud and with the ability for everybody to get their services as they go and pay as they go along, or only pay when they consume, with a lot of different solutions you're providing, that's changing the environment. And it means even in some cases, I've seen where IT departments are now charging back to the business units because they can actually figure out who's using what. Another big change is, as some of you mentioned in the chat, and please keep the ideas coming, buyer engages us much later in the selling process. And you've seen all the different numbers. 60% or more of the time has been spent by the buyer, by themselves, gathering information, and then they involve sales. Another aspect of this is self-service. Buyers like the fact that they can get information, and they frankly would rather not want to involve sales. I think there's a big tendency to say that I don't want to be sold to. I want to find this stuff out myself. And of course, as many of you mentioned in here as well, there's may even be a longer buying cycle, but the buying window of our physical involvement is much shorter, at least as a SE or as an AM showing up in person, right? And Susan talked about that. There's a lot more that happens now that's automated. So it's not that the process hasn't been going on, it's our engagement with the process. And that window has been said to be as small as 17%. So just 17% of the buyer's time is spent with us. Another thing, and many of you mentioned this, is the buying process is more complicated. Even though it's a shorter period of time, it's much more involved. And as such, it's, there's a higher bar for us to hurdle over. There's more stakeholders involved. There's more levels involved. And then, as some of you said, more POCs or other type of technical proofs that are required. Now, the sad thing is, and you can think about this and sort of self-assess, is that while all these changes have been happening, unfortunately, in many cases, pre-sales and sales hasn't changed much to adapt to that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Why I say this is because, many of you are probably on a team where you have a really good relationship across the entire engagement process, from sales and pre-sales, or the account manager and the SE, and even beyond, which we'll talk a lot about today. Unfortunately, the fact that it's still called pre-sales and sales can start to tend to perpetuate this chasm we have, this void that we have, where sometimes it feels like we're separate. Furthermore, when it comes to the way that we're interacting, unfortunately, a lot of that, when Susan put up the different evolution of the pre-sales roles, I think a lot of you are identifying with pre-sales 1.0. Maybe you're still there, right? Where it's just show up and throw up. And we don't like that. And as a pre-sales person myself, I've done all the different roles, like Garrett said. I didn't like just showing up and doing a harbor tour. Unfortunately, sometimes we're sort of forced into that. So as a salesperson, all of you that are on here in sales, and I saw tons of you that are here for sales, so thank you for being here. As a salesperson, I need to realize that I have to do a better job of partnering with my SE and making sure that we're working together, so that it's not just, hey, come and do a demo. We want to evolve to that 3.0 pre-sales and beyond. And that truly takes teamwork. So what is the impact on pre-sales? And again, I'm going to try to start to switch over to SE as a umbrella idea, and also as the role, and then sales as AM so that we can talk about being more seamless working together. So in terms of impact, here are a few things to think about in terms of what needs to change. Having a great solution anymore is not necessarily the end of the game, right? Coming up with a solution, I like to say, is probably the easiest part of our job. But unfortunately, that's not going to be what wins over the customer. Even nailing the demo and having a fantastic demo is almost table stakes anymore. It's what we are expected to do, and it's what they are expecting. I remember many times early in my career, we'd high five each other after a phenomenal demo, and nothing ever happened after that. So there's got to be more. Secondly, getting the sale is not enough. And for all the sales folks out there, you probably are realizing this, is that back in the day, when I was first involved in sales, when you sold something, you literally handed over a CD, or maybe even before that, a tape with the software on it. Once that was handed over, your job was pretty much done. And if the customer used it or not, that was up to them. There was a concept back then, and some of you might have heard of this. You can put in the chat if you've heard of this before, of shelfware, that people bought stuff and they never used it. And I'm not saying sales didn't care, but the point was, once you wound up selling, that was kind of the end of your job. And it's what Susan was talking about. We're going to explore that. So now, and this is really important, everybody, I've come up with this idea here of what I call commitment to consume. So the close or the PO is not sufficient anymore. What we are trying to drive toward is a commitment that they will consume, that they will move forward with the solution after the quote unquote sale or the PO. The other thing is to think about, because there's such a short amount of involvement, and they're getting bombarded, your clients are getting bombarded during that small time with all kinds of harbor tours and other things that look similar, and maybe your product looks the same as theirs. One of the ways we could differentiate is the way we engage, and not just engage with them, but engage together, how we work together as a team. And that will show. And when they see that you are focused on them, and that, as Susan was saying, client success is the end game, which is my big theme, then they will appreciate that, and they will feel less like they're being sold to. The other thing to think about is that we must act more seamlessly once we are engaged. And what I mean is internally. So we're going to explore today briefly some things about how we can work internally better at a more detailed level, but also zoom out at a very high level and explore everything from hello through the end of the deal. And then finally, this is just a short list of summary ideas, is proactively lead the buyer to the consumption and renewal. I have an expression that any of you that have been in my workshops, and by the way, I'm a Great Demo certified partner, so I work with Peter Cohan directly. I work with John Kerr as a principal facilitator for him. And then I have a partnership with Stephen Bistritz, who has a business where I do solutions for sales teams, in particular AMs, that's around the sales opportunity snapshot. But I like to say in my workshops, if anybody's been with me, that really selling begins in discovery. And what I mean by that is not that we show stuff in discovery, but the way we engage and the way we show that we care about what they're talking about, what their needs are, what their pains are, what their gains are. That is something that we can then proactively lead the buyer in a mutually beneficial direction, where we have a unique solution that solves their situation, but they don't know everything. There's an expression you've all heard, the customer's always right. Well, we want to make them feel right, but sometimes they don't know what they don't know, and it's our job to lead them in the right direction. So instead of just simply getting the sale, what we really want to do is lead to client success, and we all have a part in it. And specifically, sales and pre-sales has one of the most important parts, the SE and the AM, because we are the face of the company. We are that live interaction that's going to happen during that short, very complicated period where they are actually engaged with us. So with this in mind, let's take a look at a couple of things here that can help zero us in and point to the things that we can fine tune. Here's an example of a traditional role of and span of engagement of sales. So sales traditionally, got involved once the buyer started a search, and then once they bought, as Susan even mentioned, the sale kind of finishes off, and then the salesperson goes back to the beginning and looks for another sale. And pre-sales in that process mainly was focused on a technical win, which I've heard all different definitions for that, but generally speaking, it means they liked what they saw. You know, we did a good job presenting the stuff, and they said, okay, yeah, I can see where that can help me out. And that's really what the sales process consisted of. And as you can see, especially pre-sales, very what's often referred to as middle of the funnel focus, middle of the funnel focus. So what we're going to talk about is ways that we can both be involved more upstream and downstream in terms of maybe not direct involvement, but the way we can feed that process, and so that we can talk with our other counterparts, the rest of the customer facing team, to have a cohesive approach. There was a little bit of a debate in Susan's session about the idea of a handoff from sales to customer or client success. And there was a little debate in there about what should it be called. And I think really there's a lot of quote unquote handoffs throughout all this. And it's all about all of us cooperating together, so that we're all cooperating together throughout the whole thing and supporting each other. So we'll talk about that. Now, the other big thing that comes into play here is this change, all the evolution that's in the chat there. And by the way, you can copy the chat and steal those ideas. So it might not be a bad idea to grab those and say, hey, here's some things I should look at. You just drag your cursor down through the chat and you can copy and paste it to save it. Why is this important? Well, because if this traditional way of engagement is no longer necessary, and we all established that, and the buying process is different and the buyer's focus is different, this can affect all of you in your wallet and in your ability to succeed. This is a little excerpt from the 2024 consensus survey. And by the way, there is a handout that's available in the tab on the right-hand side of your screen. If you go to the Docs tab, there's a little document there that I put up there that's all these slides. The reason I point it out is because there's a link there for you to get the consensus SE compensation and workload report. And I highly recommend you grab that. There's tons of insights from it. But among other things was this one that jumped out at me, is that when it comes to pre-sales key performance indicators, if you take a look at this, and I'll zoom in on this for a moment here. If you take a look at this right up here, you will notice that out of the top 5 indicators, 4 of them have to do with the fact that we are measured as a team, and this goes for sales too, because obviously of quota and commission and everything, we are measured on things that absolutely matter even beyond the sale, because it's about revenue. It's about ARR, which is the annual recurring revenue, which comes from consumption. And because so much of this, and I'll zoom back out again here, so much of this is dependent on that, it's important for us to realize that this has a direct effect. Now, as SEs, it means working with the AMs or whoever's doing that function better. And AMs, listen up, anybody in sales, it means your SE is your superpower, your secret sauce to be able to generate more revenue, because we can set up the opportunity so that the commitment to consume is more likely to happen. So I think of the top 5 KPIs, closed revenue and ARR is a clear indication we've got to get client success. Feedback from sales, how we're working together as a team. Demo and POC activities, yes, is in there. However, what are we doing to make it laser focused on client success? That's the key takeaway for today. And then sales quota, and yes, even pre-sales or SEs are carrying more and more of or measured on quota. So check the report out and see that. The other one is the percent of deals won versus lost. And again, I would say there's a big caveat around this idea of won, because just getting a PO is not enough anymore. We need to be, and Ryan, I love that, always be discovering. I love that. That's great. We need to be looking at closing, but then executing into the engagement. So the bottom line here, and I wanted to share this with you as well, is when it comes to the technical win, that's 6th. 6th place is technical win. And I still would debate what technical win is. So we're going to talk about a definition today that'll help you out. Now, One of the things, and in terms of discovery, is very important. And I'm going to switch over to the live. This is the actual consensus survey, and this is one of the screens. I wanted to point on here that because so much of this depends on success and a proper demo, notice, and this is talking about unqualified demos, notice that the median is 30% of respondents right here. More than that are saying that, demos are not qualified. So this is the percent of demos that are unqualified that are coming through. And my question and challenge is, how can we possibly get success moving forward and have that 17% engagement window be successful if we don't have proper discovery? The report even says that this has not changed much in 2023 to 2024. So a lot of improvement there. And yes, always be discovering, because during qualification, we discover, and during the rest of the engagement, we discover. So a couple key things that I want you to cover. And by the way, making a quick announcement today, I'm in the final process of capturing all this into a book, and it should be out hopefully by mid-July. It is called Making Seamless Sales. This is a facsimile of the cover. It's going to look something like that, but it's not actually mocked up yet or not finalized. But 3 areas that we want to expand upon based on what you've already been learning so far. The importance of the awareness of the client-facing roles. So I don't think there's enough done in onboarding or even in your role to know what is it that everybody else is doing. And Southwest has a great model where they do that, where they cross-pollinate and help everybody realize the other roles. So we can work together and collaborate. The other one is everybody working under an umbrella of buyer engagement throughout a life cycle from hello to commission. It needs to start at hello, whoever that is. And by the way, when I say who, it's not necessarily a who. The hello these days is often a what. It's demo automation. By the way, my colleague Natasha is going to be covering a session on demo automation that you should definitely check out. So hello these days, that part of the process that we don't even get engaged with, that could be automation that's happening through consensus and other tools like that. But none of us are really satisfied or rewarded until the payout, which comes from consumption. And then at the core, it's really about working better as that seamless sales team as we go through. All right, so let's take a look, and I think it all fundamentally starts. Let's look for a moment here at the process, because key to this is all about the process itself. Let's take a look at modern buying and selling, and I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. There's a point that I want to get to here that I'm going to ask you something in just a moment. So get ready to put into the chat a quick response here. So let's first take a look at typical sales processes. Now yours may be a little bit different, but generally speaking, they will include these types of things. Identifying an opportunity, then qualification, then preparing the solution, presenting the solution, proposing the solution, and closing, so getting the sign off, the PO, and then enablement and discovery and measuring results. And this kind of corresponds with Susan's diagram, which was like a vertical diagram that showed, it sort of converging. Actually, I should have drawn that a little bit to the right, but the point is heavy involvement up front from sales and pre-sales, and then kind of goes over the wall somewhat to customer support. And I want you to think about that in terms of that's a continuum. We'll explore that further. Now, very important, and probably more important than anything, and a big theme of this conference is the buyer. What is the buyer going through? And this is something that I teach in my Sales Opportunity Snapshot workshop, where I go over this with the sales folks and oftentimes pre-sales in terms of the importance of the buying process. So if you take a look at this, what we have here is the buyer starts by understanding what their business objectives are. Now, sometimes that's because of an external force that causes them to change, like regulation, or maybe they've had a breach. But sometimes that's as a result of an internal investigation that they're doing because they want to improve processes. They need to cut the number of people that are doing non-value add tasks and those types of things. They take a look at the needs and they analyze what those look like and then what the impacts are, including things like Do they have budget or don't they have budget? Do they need to go find budget? Do they need to reallocate something from one project to another project? Then they look at exploring options, and notice these more or less correspond here. So there's a mapping here between the two stages. As far as when they're exploring options, that's when we get involved with showing them the possibilities. And this is also when they potentially get involved with automation or starting to explore what the possibilities are. Then they evaluate the solutions, oftentimes RFP, RFQ. Then they commit to which solution they want. And we'll talk about alternatives in a minute, because it's not just necessarily you, it could be your competitor or something like it. Then there's implementation, and then measuring results, which is where, of course, the client success comes into play, and where it's very important, as Susan said, for you to get to know, and I'm looking at my note, the chief customer officer, right, for the rest of this part of the process. Now, what I want you to do real quick in the chat, hold on, I'm going to type something in here. There's a bit of a lag, hold on. Okay. All right, so I just typed in the chat here. With the stage name, look at the stages here, and I want you to identify what stage are you usually most involved at? Where do you get involved? And this is going to vary widely. If there's a couple of main stages that you get involved, put a couple of those different stages, because I know, especially if you're in, say, and try to put the numbers, Alexi, I'm sorry, not the numbers, put the names. This is important. So put the names if you don't mind. What stage names? I want to know the stage names, not the numbers, everybody, the names. Okay, now we're getting it. So I see present solution. I see I see discovery. I see okay, qualification, right? Prepare solution, discovery, qualify, present, explore options, present solution, discovery, present. Okay. So this is exactly what happens every time. And this is why I asked you to say the stage names instead of the numbers. All right, keep them coming, keep them coming. I want you to scroll back a little through the chat and look at can you observe something about the stage names that have been put into the chat? Do you notice something about them? Most all of them are in reference to the sales process. Now, I find this interesting. You're all obviously in sales roles, so naturally you would think that way. But I want to challenge you with that. What's wrong with that? Because yes, exactly. Our fan, exactly. It's our perspective, right? Alexi said our perspective. What we really should be focusing on and thinking about, and this is a big takeaway for today, is what is the buyer doing? It really doesn't matter what we're doing. When we're doing a demo, why are we doing it? Are they exploring options, or are they trying to evaluate a solution, or are they about to commit? And by the way, wherever we got involved, especially if it's an RFP, everybody that's in sales, if you get involved here and it's an RFP or an RFX, what has happened prior to that? They didn't just start to think of this when an RFP came out. They have been thinking about this for a while. They've done a lot of homework. And we want to, as Julie says, we want to affect the buying process. We want to help them through the buying process. That's why Garen's book is called Selling is Hard and Buying is Harder, right? It's about buyer enablement. So my challenge for you is to think not so much about our sales stages. Yes, we need that. And in fact, here's the thing. Most of the time, we didn't even think about that. I want you to think about what's upstream and downstream in your sales process, but then let's focus on the buyer and what they're doing. So with that in mind, let's take a quick look here. And this is explored much more in detail in the book. Is let's take a look at what is our sales engagement with the buyer process. So if we lay that buying process out at the bottom, I'm going to give you a high-level view first of the SE and AM role. And again, this is not hard and fast, rules. This is some ideas and some guidance, and it also can give us an idea of where we want to try to change to. And by the way, Michael, I totally agree with you. If you're entering at the RFP stage, you've already lost. We need to influence that. We need to move left in the buying process so we can influence. Unfortunately, Michael, a lot of salespeople still answer RFPs and RFQs. It's kind of a way of doing some business. But if you are, don't start there. Look to the left and find out what caused that to happen. That will give us much better insight. And I've got some specific things I'll share on that in a moment. So this is high level, just to get the conversation started. Generally speaking, an account manager type role would be involved at the beginning and move all the way through. And at some point, their involvement, their direct involvement with the buyer is going to drop off a little bit in the middle here, because this tends to be a little more technical. So what is it? And by the way, they definitely are involved more at the end here. And then there's the concept of somebody that needs to do account management through the rest of the process to ensure that success has been achieved. So what is it the account manager is doing? Well, of course, qualifying and discovery. And this isn't always just with a person. This could be through automated systems. So there's a role that's happening, whether it's a person or whether it's automation. Qualification and discovery. And I do lump those together. I truly believe, and if you aren't seeing this or if you aren't doing this, please change. It's an encouragement to me too. Qualification does give us discovery, because most qualification, if it's done bad, is only to figure out if we should proceed. That's bad qualification. Proper qualification is we're looking for a mutual fit. We're looking for something where we can work together, where they have a need that's legitimate and urgent enough, and we have the solution that can provide it for them. So in my sales opportunity methodology, we talk about is, what is our solution fit? I mean, it's, can we implement this? Is this something that's aligned with our customer goals? Is this aligned with our strategic goals? Is this a market we want to go after, or a vertical where we can help? So that all happens at the beginning there. And the person, by the way, that a lot of this starts to happen with when a person gets involved is somebody that I call a business decision maker. Now, there's a lot of decision makers, and this is where it gets complex real quick. We could spend days on this, but I want you to focus on maybe somebody called business decision maker, who is one of the key people that at least represents that idea of a business outcome. That is the person, some people call it an economic buyer. That doesn't go far enough in my book. We are looking for the person that's affected by our solution. They're the one that's looking for this to be fixed. Either they have the pain or they want to achieve the gain. So during the middle part of this process, the salesperson, and it is the person for sure at this point, very much involved with influencing the stakeholders, influencing and negotiating the way that the review is going to go, the proof of concept, the technical validation, and working that as a partner with the customer. Then at the end, of course, they get involved with business close so that we set this up for consumption. Now, I want to flip one slide. If you're following along here, I want to flip one slide over real quick and show you what I mean by business close. And I know this is a lot of words. You can look at it later. Let me point out the key things. So business close is that this business decision maker, and again, it could be a committee of people or a general concept, but we haven't done our job as an account manager or a sales if we haven't got the following things figured out. And by the way, the more of this we know, the higher the probability of success and of consumption. So these are guidelines around a checklist of, do I have all this taken care of? So we need, as an account manager, as a salesperson, I need to make sure that the business decision maker confirms that the business outcomes will be achieved as a result of the project. And by project, I mean whatever solution we're providing. And that the business risks are addressed. I know Susan talked about the CFO being very interested in business risk. CFO is going to provide key input to that business decision maker and may even be part of that group. And that they are willing to invest or commit to proceed based on what they've seen. So that's a huge ask just for the number one item there. And by the way, for SEs, don't tune out. This is what we are helping to achieve through our technical close, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So my theme is everybody should know everything about what everybody's doing, or at least the main important things. Secondly, the client commits to move forward with this project or solution in a set time frame. So this is where the element of, in Great Demo, we call it a critical date. In Sales Opportunity Snapshot, we call it the compelling reason for change. So when do they need this done by? When will things start to break? So they commit to do it within that time frame and at the exclusion of other priorities, including do nothing. Because here's the thing, and you'll see this for technical close also. You aren't the only solution. I hate to tell you that. The matter of fact is that they could choose you, they could choose a competitor of yours, or the biggest competitor that we all have right now is do nothing, especially in this economy, right? So one of the big alternatives that we are competing against is do nothing. We need to get their commitment that they see do nothing is more risky than moving forward, that there's higher cost in do nothing, and that there's less value in doing nothing or homegrown solution. So that's huge to get them to make sure that they do that. If they do that, our probability of close goes up. And again, SEs and pre-sales, I've got an equivalent for you in just a moment. This is all tying together. And finally, they compel the approver. So here's where the CFO often comes in, or maybe it's procurement, right? Procurement gets involved, and all of you in sales probably know procurement is the sales prevention department, right? Because they oftentimes are just asking for a discount or have all these onerous contract things. Well, the good news is if we have a business decision maker, they should be influencing whoever is signing off on it. Maybe they can sign off on it themselves, but they may need to go to a CFO to get sign off. They may need to move funds from one project to another project. So they commit that they will find the funds and the resources to sign off and execute. So that's the business decision maker. And by the way, if you have comments or questions on this, throw them in the Q&A, and maybe specifically around that in particular, throw it in the Q&A. And if we can't get to the questions at the end of today's session, I'll be glad to communicate with you directly. My contact stuff is in the profile and also at the end of the presentation, as well as the handout. So that's the business close that the account manager is working on, and every single thing that involves hello through consumption and renewal and continuous usage and client success needs to be supported that way, but it's not always with a person potentially. Second layer, and I'm sure you knew I was going here, is the SE. So generally speaking, an SE role, and generally speaking, an SE is not going to get involved very early on, even if the salesperson is, and the salesperson should be involved driving this, right? But it may not make sense for the SE to be involved all the way at the very beginning. However, it was mentioned in Susan's session, the SE being involved more and more to the left, when it's done properly, is absolutely the right thing. But that's where qualification comes in. It needs to be aligned, and we need to have enough discovery so that we're not just bringing the SE in, definitely not to show a harbor tour. We're not showing solutions yet. That's going to come a little bit later. So what is the SE doing here? Well, the SE is working with the technical decision maker primarily. And again, this might be a person, it might be a selection committee, it could be one of various things, but it's very important to think of the person or persons that are deciding on the technology. It's not just throwing a demo out there and hope it sticks. It's not harbor tours to show everything that you have, because I said at the beginning, unfortunately, the demo is not the end all be all. And John Kerr has a great expression for this, which is our solutions have no inherent value. Our solutions have no inherent value. So the idea is that we wind up needing to connect to business needs, which is up front. And Clifford, I see your comment there, and John, the comment, actually it was John's comment about MedPick. Absolutely. There's a lot of that there, and any of the good methodologies have a lot of that in it. What we're talking about is the execution. So those have good checklist items that point to this, and then executing and being able to implement that. It means sales is sharing that with the SE. So I agree with you on that. Now, what else is the SE doing? Of course, is a lot of technical proof. And technical proof doesn't mean show up and throw up harbor tours. What it means is technical proof based on discovery that comes from anybody upstream in the sales process or any automation that came upstream in the sales process. So Consensus provides a lot of discovery information. Who touched it? How long? Did they give it to somebody else? Many demo automation tools can help with that. In Great Demo, we talk about technical proof as one of two types of demos. Technical proof is when we have discovery done, or we are in the process of doing discovery, and therefore we can make specific capabilities and show specifically what aligns to the business needs. That's what we're talking about. Vision generation is different. I'll talk about that in a moment, but vision generation could be done more upfront to help us get discovery, which means we can then do the technical proof. The other thing that we're focused on and should be focused on as an SE is way above and beyond a technical win, is the idea of technical close. Technical close. And let me flip again to that other slide if you're following along with the handout, and you could take a look at what technical close is, or technical closure. So the SE needs to own technical closure. And this is where we confirm that a stakeholder, a real live person, has said and commits. And I know this is a big ask. This is ideal, but the more of this we have, the more likely we're going to close. And the more likely, even important, we're going to get success and consumption. So it's where the TDM agrees that the solution is meeting their technical requirements. So that's what I would call a technical win. So technical win is inside of here, but I challenge all of you, sales and pre-sales, SEs and AMs, to elevate it beyond that. So it needs to support the requirements, but not in a vacuum, not because your stuff is cool, but in order to support the BDM's business goals and make sure that that's what they're trying to achieve. Also, they commit to implement, and that means consume or renew. So this is why I say it's really, we're not selling anymore. We're not closing per se. We're getting a commitment to consume. They see the benefit of the solution. They will use the solution. It's not enough for them to say, yes, I like it. And of course, at the exclusion of the alternatives, including do nothing. So we want to make sure as a SE or any type of that role and any engagement that we have in a technical level, we are eliminating the alternatives and showing the value of using our solution to support their needs. Lastly, and of course not least important, but very important for how this all works, is that they recommend implementation to the BDM. So look at what's happening here. The SE working with the TDM allows them to recommend to the BDM. BDM is not going to make the technical decision, especially in super complex sales. They're going to delegate that to a TDM, and the TDM or somebody like that is going to look at the technology. And by definition, pre-sales, we're kind of involved at that level. But there's a bigger picture going on here. And that picture is what's happening one level above, and above that. Somewhere is that BDM that's looking for the business needs and has the desire to solve pain or achieve gain. So by us working together with the TDM as pre-sales and the account manager working together with the BDM in sales, we've now got a winning combination of commitment to close, commitment to consume, commitment to have success. And then together we can drive that success. Notice the SE continues, and it's just ... because depending on your organization, who that is or what that looks like might be different. So again, if you have specific comments around this, please feel free to put them into the Q&A, and we'll try to get to them at the end, or I'll answer them separately. Key takeaway here, it's a partnership. There's no separate teams. There's no separate organizations and managers and enablement. Please help this. It's us working together. It's like a marriage. It's 100 and 100%. It's not 50% and 50% of sales and pre-sales. It's both of us. And we interwork together and collaborate throughout, including others that might be upstream and others that might be downstream. The more of this we can get, the better we're going to be. And this is the slide that I just showed you. So with that all in mind, when it comes to the idea of how we put this all together, and I'm about to wrap up here with two main concepts, and I'll get your input in just a second, and then we'll see if we can get to some of those questions. What I look at this is the overall buyer enablement life cycle. Notice if I go all the way back to here when we realized, oh, we better look at the sales cycle. Excuse me, see, I even did it. We better look at the buyer cycle instead of the sales cycle, right? This is what's the most important, is the buyer cycle. And if we take that, notice that usually is depicted as a linear process, as if there's an end to it. I'd like to propose something a little bit different today. And here's the two final thoughts I'll leave you with. One is, it's not a linear process. It's actually a circle. It's a life cycle. The identification of an opportunity and then all this that's going on throughout here for us is running off the hub of the buyer. The buyer is the one that's driving the whole thing, but we can help them through it. And it becomes like a flywheel effect, right? We can help them through it. We can work with them. And the idea of it being a circle is it doesn't stop here. As a matter of fact, if you think about this for a second, we may get to this stage where they start to find out what possibilities are, and maybe that changes their needs, and they go back to stage one and evaluate new options. Maybe we get to here where they're evaluating solutions, and we realize, you know what, there's something more that they need. We might want to come back here and start to explore other things with them. Not saying to slow down the process. I'm saying do the process properly, where we're willing to go where it needs to go. And oh, by the way, when this finishes off, it's not done, because when they're measuring results, where else can we explore in terms of their needs? Maybe there's other departments, maybe there's other stakeholders. So wrapping this up, and this is where the other idea of SE and AM comes into play, is solution enablement is really what I think is the overarching life cycle that's going around the circle. And it just continually goes around. When we are deploying, we are looking for a continuous relationship for the next thing. And then, of course, account management as an overarching idea here. And that means managing the client's information from hello to consumption and back again. It means documenting things in a CRM system. It means working together with proper handoffs. When you hand something off to somebody else, they know. And yes, I'll use handoff, but it's an overlap, right? It's a collaboration. It's a continuous set of information. Because as Susan said, the company really owns the client information, but all of us are the company. We're the ones that are the client-facing role. And what I want you to think about, and then we'll just explore this just for 1 minute here. If you're primarily in these roles, what can you do? And I'll ask you right here, upstream. I'm going to put it in the chat. Thinking about what we just covered, what can you help upstream that would either help your account manager or even help automation? If you're in a pre-sales role, what would help automation that you know about, something you could help provide? Marketing, you could help your SDR, your BDR, your AE, if that's who gets involved very, very early. What do you think you can help them with that you know about? And I would say one thing to think about is they might need to be doing some vision generation. So what do you know about the vertical that they might be talking to? What do you know about the customers or the clients or the stakeholders, right? Where can you share success stories so that they can introduce that at the beginning of the process? And now they have some success stories that they can use in order to get this flywheel going for the customer. Content, exactly, Darren, thank you. Save your situation slides, save your illustrations. If you're a great demo practitioner, give it to them. Work with marketing, as Jazz says, to have the stuff start selling in discovery so they could discover things they hadn't even thought about, right? And then think about this as we move through this cycle. What can you help post commit? And I'll just leave it as commit, because it is a commitment. They're committing to do something. They're committing to spend money, to consume, whatever. What can you help with there? In your role, think about the information you have that's available. What do you need to do the proper connection for that to be successful for your client? what types of things would you do there? And I would suggest make sure you document it. If you have a pre-sales system or a CRM system that you're all using, give access to the deployment people, because when they are deploying, they want to know who was the business decision maker, what were the business opportunities, the customer pain points to be addressed. Exactly, Alexi. Why did we do this to begin with? And then they can ensure that it's happening. Here's the other thing about it is it allows us to have that mindset of a continuum where it's not just one time around or not linear. We are setting this flywheel in motion. We all have a part of it. We enter and we exit. So real quick, and then we'll get to maybe one or two takeaways. Garrett, if you want to come on back and get ready for this. Final thoughts, focus on client success from hello through to commission. All client-facing roles should be aligned, but that means we should know a little bit about all of them. And that's what I go into in the book, or just grab your colleagues, grab your manager and get a tutorial on what's happening. And then we need to work as a team. We win as a team, the client wins, and as a company, we win overall. And so does account management and solution enablement. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. There's a QR code there you can scan. Check out the website and watch for, hopefully, like I said, in July, a book that goes into a lot more detail on all this. But my goal today was to give you a half dozen, maybe actionable insights, take you from wherever you are to the next level up, and just explore one topic and one thing and see where it takes you. So thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of the session. And thank you, Garrett, for this. Thank you, Sammy, for organizing it. And thank you, Consensus, for putting this all together. Have fun for the rest of your sessions. Let's see if we can get a couple of Q&As answered here. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks, Art. What a great session. We do have one question that came in here, and then I've got one as well. So we've got one from Michael that says, what are the best ways for AMs to share info for the SEs so the SE has all available information and qualifying questions answered prior to SE involvement?
Yeah, so the one thing is to know what it is that needs to be shared. So AMs and SEs should get together. If you're a SE or pre-sales role, grab your account manager, show them this presentation, go through it with them. We should understand mutually what's required in order to have a proper technical proof. The other thing is to share it is make sure that it's documented. I know myself as well as a salesperson, I don't like CRM systems. Generally, it's for the purpose of sales management and pipeline management. However, if used properly, and if you have a tool, I actually have an app that goes with this. There's a Salesforce app. There's also Dynamics 365 app. If you have those systems, hit me up and I can tell you more about that. But it should be documented from hello, their initial notes. We should have access to that. The whole rest of the team, all the way down through enablement, should all have, I should say execution, should all have access to those initial notes. They're going to give insights about who was involved, what do they care about. And if you want, one of the great ones is the situation slide in Great Demo. We talk about what's the critical issue, what are the challenges that they're having to achieve that, what are the things that they need in order to make that happen, when do they need it by, and what's the value they're going to get out of it. Just those 5 items alone are going to help with that alignment in terms of what's going on. So those are some ideas. First and foremost, get together and talk. Make sure you're both coordinated on it, and all that stuff will show up downstream when you implement. So the second thing is document it. Thanks. Appreciate the question.
All right. And that actually answered my question. And so, since you did that and killed 2 birds with 1 stone, we'll go ahead and I'll share my screen and get to the end of the session here.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, everybody, please make sure before you leave to grab the handout, and feel free to watch the recording. I know I threw a lot at you. Thank you for those of you watching the recording. Feel free to hit me up and enjoy the rest of your session. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, and thank you, Art, once again for these insights. Working seamlessly together, such a great topic, such a needed topic at this time.